So I'm reviewing a title that was put out a while ago by G Collections, Amorous Professor Cherry. Now, the title doesn't really instill a lot of confidence in me, but, I've been pleasantly surprised before, so let's give it a shot, shall we?
Okay, here we go. Let's start this thing up. Wait, what?
I have to say that I'm rather stunned myself. Wait a sec, this can't be right.
Okay, menu, options, return to title. Okay, let's try this again. Not continuing, start. That has to be a new game, right?
Okay then, let's see where this goes. She says she'll do it for me, and... yeah. Whoa. I don't think I can show that. So, whoa. Amorous Professor Cherry shows you what it's about from the get-go. I mean, this game was obviously made for one thing and one thing only. The title is your first clue, but they set you straight right from scene one if you're expecting anything more. I mean, seriously, the protagonist and the heroine aren't even introduced before things get all hot and heavy, if you know what I'm saying.
So, now that we know that Amorous Professor Cherry isn't likely to shock me with its depth, it's time to examine the game for what it is. As one might expect from a game of its sort, the characters are pretty flat and, quite frankly, not at all memorable. They're all stereotypes, driven by base motivators befitting of an unremarkable AROG title. As the player, you step into the shoes of Kota, a potential candidate for the biggest horn dog I've had the misfortune to meet in this type of game. Kota is a high school student that has an undying lust for his social studies teacher, Cherry. When he isn't entertaining fantasies of being seduced by his teacher, he's in his room jerking it to his hidden stash. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that I was a teenager either, but damn, this guy's hormones are just out of control. The lead female protagonist is the game's namesake, Kota's professor, Cherry. She's a rather absent-minded, somewhat clumsy teacher who has a shy but caring personality. There's also her co-worker who teaches math, Mamiko. She's quite blunt and could be called a free spirit. She could also be called a slut, as she seems quite content to sleep with any guy who expresses any interest. Yay. Finally, there's Kota's classmate, Kyoka. She's your stock bossy childhood friend who took an interest in Kota after he helped her get through a recent incident. Of course, Kota also has a stable best friend, Shigeaki, who's there mostly for comic relief. The basics of the story are as follows. Kota has his teacher on his mind so much that his grades have been recently slipping. Confronting him about this, Kota gives a roundabout confession that his thinking about her has to do with it. And so, as any good teacher would do, she offers to help him with his little problem. Yes, it's exactly what you're thinking. Man, I don't recall high school being nearly that much fun. Anyway, things spiral out of control from there depending on what you decide as you play as Kota. Well, sort of. The game's core story doesn't change no matter what you do, so really, you just see some different branches as you go along and end up with a different ending depending on those choices. Frankly, I don't think there's any reason to play this game if you're not interested in the naughty stuff. This same basic story has been told 100 times before, and told better. It's the classic forbidden relationship story, between teacher and student, but with stock characters driven, again, by really base motivations. The creators knew that sex was the driving force behind this game, and so that's the focus. Whether or not that's for you, well, that's just something you'll have to decide for yourself. If that does interest you though, there's at least a lot of those types of scenes and a lot of unique images to go along with them. The art is also sharp and colorful, though the character design isn't exactly my cup of tea. The music, like the story, feels quite uninspired and generic. It doesn't really inspire emotions so much as it just continues the flow of what's happening. Certainly not a high note. At least the options available to you meet today's expectations of what a visual novel should offer, though they don't really offer anything more either. You can turn on auto-read, skip previously read dialogue, save and load the game, and turn individual character voices on and off along with their volume. Likewise, you can also adjust the volume of music and sound effects. For what it's worth, the translation of the game is well done. I didn't notice any typos or grammatical errors, but the problem is that the script itself just isn't anything special. When all the chips are down, Amorous Professor Cherry simply feels like a rather uninspired game. The core premise was obviously to make an AROG game centered around a well-endowed teacher, and to that end, the creators most certainly succeeded. However, unless that core ideal just really appeals to you, Amorous Professor Cherry will have very little to offer.
普段が本性でこれはあんたたちに合わせてる